Welcome to the latest edition of the Sports Directors. You get just two of us today. It's Bill Pollock from MissouriNet.com, and I'm Bill Scott from WRN.com. Good to have you along here. It's been a couple of weeks. Vacations kind of stealing us away for the summer, and we'll be back in full tilt every Tuesday throughout the course of the football season for sure. Bill, instead of football, though, we're going to talk about the NHL. The draft was held over the weekend. And along with it, some news coming out that the Players Association apparently does not like the shootouts that have become, I guess, semi-famous for the fans, at least. They want to settle it in overtime. They don't want the long games. And to do that, they've decided to it's already been experimental in the American Hockey League. Even the United States Hockey League has gone to smaller lineups for their overtime sessions, and now the NHL will adapt it on a trial basis for next year, and that's to go 3-on-3 in overtime. The percentages apparently go way up in terms of being able to decide a game in overtime and not have to use the shootout.
Yeah, I kind of like the shootout. I think fans like the shootout, and I think that was it around like 53% of the overtime games were decided on shootouts, and they want to do away with that. 3-on-3 certainly opens up the ice. I mean, when you watch these guys on 4-on-4, the ice opens up, and I thought that was actually a great pace of play, and it still made it exciting. And you get 5 minutes of that. But I always found myself in the overtime games of hoping that they wouldn't score, so that it does go to a shootout. But I'm kind of on the fence with this because you do get the point. Whether or not you win or lose in overtime or lose in the shootout. The shootout is fun to watch, but, it kind of reminds me in a way of soccer. Finish the game out by playing it the way it's supposed to be played and not just individual skills either. But it is awful exciting. So there's no doubt going 3-on-3 is certainly going to open it up and end these things within the 5-minute overtime.
I've got a little bit of a complaint myself, Bill. I think from a fan standpoint, what's more exciting than the shootout? Now, you can talk to the hockey traditionalist, and they'll want to decide it the real way and go 5-on-5 and let it take as long as it has to take. And that's the way it used to be years ago. But I'll tell you one thing. I'm agreeing with you 100%. If they settle it in the 5-minute overtime, great. But I was always kind of saying, I'd say to my son, hey, don't go to bed. Even though it's late, I said, don't go to bed because I said, we're going to get a shootout here pretty quick. I love the shootout. In my opinion, there's, the Players Association and the players, they obviously want it this way. But I think somebody forgot to ask the fans. And isn't it about appeasing isn't pro sports and the rules that they make across the board, whether it's football, basketball, whatever, don't they look at appeasing the fans first? And did the NHL forget that they're supposed to be able to keep the fans happy too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that seems to be the thing that the fans want the most is the shootout, and they get into it, and it's exciting, and you have just enough. You've got 3 rounds. Sometimes it can obviously extend if the game is still tied, but you've got 3 rounds, but they take care of it, pretty quick. They get into it right away. And there's a big buildup, and then bam! I mean, it's over, and it happens quick, and it is fun. I would almost like to see them go right to the shootout instead of even a 5-minute overtime. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the 3-on-3, how quick these games end. Is it kind of anticlimactic? Is it going to be one of those things where it's over in a minute and a half? I mean, just 3-on-3. I don't know. I mean, one guy is out of position. I mean, that could be over real quick. And I don't know, especially when you get up to that level. Maybe on some of those lower levels, the USHL and the AHL, maybe it's a little different. But you get up here in the NHL, I mean, this thing could be over in 30, 45 seconds. And then I don't know how much fun that would necessarily be either.
Right. They're going to put the best 3 players, offensive players on the ice on each side. Problem is not all teams' offensive best 3 players necessary to play a lick of defense. So it will be end to end, and really, I think much like the shootout, it's really going to depend on the goalies. The goalies are going to have to come up big in these events if they want to extend it, beyond the first couple of minutes of play. All right, that's the NHL topic. We now shift to baseball. On the Sports Director episode a few weeks ago, we talked about the dominance of the Kansas City Royals in the All-Star balloting. And I think the consensus, Bill, was if you want to do something about it, if you're the other teams, hey, get out and vote. Kansas City probably had more home games that allowed in-stadium balloting to get a jump on things, as well as the online balloting, stuffing the ballot boxes, those types of things. Things are starting to even out a little bit. Kansas City still has a pretty good upper hand, but instead of 8 starting players, they're now down to 5.
Well, and I think it came out right after we did our sports directors episode where Major League Baseball came out and said they were going to throw out a couple of million votes. And I never really, I heard the story, but I didn't grasp it fully. And they said, oh, yeah, we've done that before. And I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. Why are you throwing out votes? And then it just so happens that the next update, and now we go from 8 to 5 Kansas City Royals. Listen, it doesn't bother me. I think the system is flawed, and I talked about that the last time. I'm not upset that it went from 8 to 5 Royals, but it just seems kind of fishy that, yeah, we're going to throw some votes out, and now teams will have a chance to make up some ground, and all of a sudden 3 starters are out of it. Just seems a little fishy to me. Yeah. But I mean, no doubt this is an inside job by Major League Baseball.
No question. All right, now we go to the dominance in baseball here in the first half. The 2 teams in Missouri, I told you off air that Pittsburgh had the second best record. That was not correct. Kansas City has the second best record. So it's the St. Louis Cardinals, the 51-24 record. Kansas City next at 44-29. That's a 7-game difference. Houston has the third best record at 45-34. Pittsburgh follows at 42-34, and Washington is 5th at 42-34 as well. The St. Louis Cardinals at 51-24, first team to reach the half-century mark already this season, and there doesn't appear to be any end in sight. They've got that outstanding pitching staff, and they are, as well as Pittsburgh has played in the first half of the season so far, their 42-33 record is good for 9 games behind the St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis is better, in my opinion, now than what they've even been in previous years when they've dominated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't remember the guy who tweeted this, but this was before the Cardinals-Cubs series. And he said that the Pittsburgh Pirates had the best record in baseball since May 20th. And again, this was like last Thursday or Friday. And they were still at the time 6.5 games behind the Cardinals. It's remarkable what they're doing. And they're doing this without Adam Wainwright, without Matt Holliday, who had a 45-game streak of reaching base safely to start the season. He's been out. They've been without Matt Adams. They had a guy coming back in Jaime Garcia who had some question marks about his health. He's pitching well. Lance Lynn was on the DL. Now he's back. And you've got Michael Wacha and Carlos Martinez leads the staff in the number of strikeouts. So they just keep churning out these starting pitchers, and these guys are getting the job done. And they grind out victories. And that's the thing that when I watch the Cardinals, they're never out of a game. Last week they were in Miami taking on the Marlins. They fell behind 3-0, gave up a couple of home runs. Carlos Martinez did. He settles down. They inch their way back into the game, and they come out with a 4-3 win. There's not a lot of teams in baseball that I think look at a 3-0 lead early and say, okay, we've got a chance. But by the 5th inning, I think a lot of teams are kind of looking, all right, let's get into tomorrow. Let's probably count this one out. If we get a rally, great. But, let's look to game 2 of the series. They keep grinding away, and they do it in late innings, and they never quit. It's remarkable what they've done so far. Now, can they keep this pace up? I don't know what's going to slow them down.
Yeah, well, it's been a while since we've seen a team win 100 ball games in a season, and we'll see if they can keep up the pace. But I'll say this about the St. Louis Cardinals: certainly their record tells you they are the best team in baseball. Player for player, I think they have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. But I think there's a lot to be said about a veteran team that knows how to win baseball games. And you talked about the ability to never say die, to be able to come back. There's a lot of teams that need to figure out how to win. The Cardinals clearly know how to win, Bill. And I'm not so sure, if, talent-wise, player for player, if you stack them up against every team in the majors, that you would say they're the, not knowing the records, that you would say they're the best team in baseball. But you know what? The way they win, the way they know how to win, the experience, the playoff experience, the manager, Matheny, I think, has grown into a great young manager. They're clearly the best, and there's a reason why they have that 51-24 record.
they do the little things, and you can look at all these stats and say sabermetrics or whatever, that those are the small things they look at. But they're aggressive on the base paths. Sometimes they run themselves in the outs. In the Friday opener against the Cubs, they ran themselves into 2 outs at home plate in the first 2 innings, just trying to be aggressive. They were down in that game. They bring up a guy who they call up from their AAA squad in Memphis in the 8th inning to pinch hit, and he hits a home run to tie it. They load the bases in the bottom of the 10th, and there's a ground ball. The Cubs pull their infield in. They get a ground ball, but their young second baseman throws on the run, had time, didn't set his feet, throws the ball up high. Peter Borges scores with the winning run. They beat Arizona in a game earlier this year. Peter Borges, same thing, coming in hard at third. They were trying to turn a double play. Got the force out at home. He takes the catcher's legs out. Catcher launches the ball down the right field line. Runner from second scores. I mean, they do those little things that cause other teams to make mistakes and break down. And that leads to a lot of victories and a lot of success. And that's, you can look and say, well, that's lucky, but that's just hard-nosed and smart baseball and aggressive baseball. Sometimes it doesn't work, but a lot of times it works in their favor.
Well, not to mention, Bill, they bunt, they will hit and run. Those are the little things you're talking about. Again, you're going to run yourselves into some outs from time to time, but being aggressive on the bases, I think you can never go wrong with being aggressive on the bases. The team that I cover here in Milwaukee, they're a team that sits and lives and dies by the home run. And it's a big reason. I mean, their pitching staff is obviously not comparable to the Cardinals at this point in time, but there's a reason why their record is what it is, because they live and die by the home run. The Cardinals don't need to live and die by the home run. Home runs are bonuses for the Cardinals, in my opinion. They're not known as a massively big home run hitting team, but they play the game the right way, and they do the little things right. So the Cardinals, we'll be talking about them. I get the feeling as the season continues to roll on at 51-24. Bill, have a great week, great 4th of July weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week on the Sports Directors.
That sounds good. Sounds good. We'll talk to you then.